Shots fired, shots fired. Those words still echo in my mind. Back then, I thought they were just emergency words. Radio chatter, protocol, urgency. Years later, I realized they were something else entirely. They weren't describing gunfire. They were announcing the end of one life and the beginning of another. From a very young age, I lived with direction. I wasn't drifting. I wasn't guessing. I wasn't finding myself. I knew who I wanted to be. I wanted to be an FBI agent. Not because of movies, not because of glamour, but because, to me, the FBI represented the highest form of justice, the sharpest edge of law enforcement, the place where intelligence, discipline, and purpose met. In 8th grade, we took a career aptitude test. When the results came back, one category stood above all the others: law enforcement. I remember staring at that paper and feeling something settle inside my chest. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. This was confirmation. Sure, I could become a police officer, but why stop there? If I was going to dedicate my life to something, I wanted the highest level. I wanted the best of the best. I wanted the FBI. We had a family friend, a detective, someone who had done work alongside the FBI. One day I finally asked him the question that mattered most to me. What should I study if I want to become an FBI agent? Criminology? Psychology? He shook his head. No, he said. Study Arabic and Persian. I remember being surprised. That wasn't the answer I expected. They need linguists, he continued. If you speak Arabic or Persian, especially both, you'll be a shoo-in. That conversation changed everything. Fast forward to my first year of college. There I was, walking across a snow-covered campus in New Hampshire, officially an Arabic major. Not because I loved languages, not because I was fascinated by the Middle East, but because I had a goal, and I was disciplined enough to follow the path that led to it. Part of the Arabic major required taking a class called Introduction to Arab Culture. It was winter semester, cold, gray, long. One day our professor played a documentary, Islam, Empire of Faith. I didn't know it at the time, but that moment would quietly rewrite my entire life. In that classroom, for the first time ever, I heard the Adhan, the call to prayer. Something about it struck me instantly. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it cut through me in a way I couldn't explain. That sound followed me. When class ended, I stepped outside into the snow. Students passed by, boots crunched against ice. The world went on as normal. But inside me, something was different. For days, maybe weeks, it felt like everything around me was echoing that call, as if it wasn't coming from a minaret, but from inside my chest. I didn't know what it meant. I only knew I was being called to something. At that point, I wasn't searching for a new religion. Not at all. I was a Christian, deeply involved, deeply committed. I had grown up in the church. I gave sermons. I led youth services. Faith wasn't a phase for me. It was my foundation. But there were things that always unsettled me. Not necessarily the belief, but the practice. Denominations that contradicted each other. Worship styles that changed depending on who was in charge. I watched entire services transform overnight just because a new pastor arrived and decided to try something different. I remember thinking, how can worship, something meant to be divine, be so easily reshaped by human preference? Still, I told myself, I'm limited. God isn't. This must be as good as it gets. Then Islam entered my life, quietly, unintentionally, almost accidentally. Out of curiosity, I started reading, listening, observing. Let me understand this, I told myself. Let me take what's good here and become a better Christian. I walked into the Muslim Student Association room on campus for the first time and picked up a small booklet about Salah, the Islamic prayer. I read through it carefully, the conditions, the movements, the words, the discipline, and suddenly something inside me broke open. This is what I've been looking for my entire life. I didn't say that out loud. I was too afraid of what it might mean. During spring break, I went on a Christian mission trip to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. We were there to help rebuild homes, serve food, clean debris. But in between the work, I found myself asking strange questions. "Do you know where East is?" I asked one of the leaders. They looked at me oddly. I needed to find the direction, so I could pray. A Christian, quietly performing Muslim prayer, unsure of what he was becoming. For 2 months I lived like that, practicing Salah, learning Islamic beliefs, still calling myself Christian, until one Friday afternoon, I attended Jumu'ah prayer for the second time. I sat there listening to the khutbah. It wasn't abstract. It wasn't distant. It spoke directly to my life, to my questions, to my confusion. Then we stood shoulder to shoulder. We bowed. We prostrated, foreheads on the ground, and something inside me finally surrendered. After the prayer, I sat alone in the small prayer room, silent, still. I thought about everything I had invested in Christianity and everything I had already given to Islam, and the truth became unavoidable. I had already crossed the line. I stood up, walked to the imam, and said the words that would change my name and my destiny forever. I want to become Muslim. I want to take my shahada. And just like that, the path I thought I was walking on disappeared beneath my feet. After I became Muslim, nothing in my life looked different at first, but everything felt different. I was still in college, still an Arabic major, still chasing the same goal I'd carried for years. The FBI was no longer a distant dream. It was becoming real. I applied, and then something unbelievable happened. I was accepted, not once, but twice, for internships. Washington, D.C. summers, intelligence work, real files, real responsibility. I went through a background investigation so thorough, it felt like my entire life had been laid out on a table. Every place I'd lived, every person I'd known, every conversation that mattered. Then came the polygraph. They asked me everything. And months later, I received what most people never do: top secret clearance. I was trusted with information that could change lives, destabilize governments, protect nations. I had made it. On paper, my future was flawless. I had a job offer waiting for me as an intelligence analyst. I had contacts with linguists. I knew exactly where my career was going. Once I turned 26, I'd apply for the special agent position. Everything was aligned. And yet, something inside me was slowly unraveling. It didn't happen all at once. It was subtle, quiet, uncomfortable. I began to see things I hadn't seen before, not because they were hidden, but because I had been conditioned not to notice them. Growing up white, American, middle class, I had absorbed a narrative without realizing it, that institutions exist to protect us, that power is neutral, that harm is accidental. But Islam had sharpened my vision. I started to see systems, not just individuals. Yes, the FBI brings criminals to justice. Yes, it protects people whose rights are violated. But it is also a political machine. Its focus shifts with fear. Its targets change with narratives. Its power is rarely questioned, especially by those it doesn't harm. And slowly, painfully, I realized something I didn't want to admit. I could not hold these two identities together forever. A Muslim, committed to justice, accountability, and moral clarity, and an institution that too often caused deep harm to the very communities I loved. I tried to balance it. I told myself I could be a bridge, a reformer, someone on the inside. But then came the conversation that shattered that illusion. I was sitting in the living room of the man who would become my father-in-law, an Afghan man, gentle, warm, deeply principled. He welcomed me into his home, encouraged my aspirations, trusted my intentions. Then his expression changed. He looked at me seriously and said, "I think Muslims like you are needed in the FBI, but I don't think a Muslim who works there could be married to my daughter." The words hit me like a blow, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. In that moment, everything crystallized. I could have the woman I loved, a family, children, a life built on spiritual integrity, or I could have the career I had chased for years, a career I no longer felt at peace with. For the first time, the choice was clear, and clarity is terrifying. I walked away. Leaving the FB, I was both the hardest and easiest decision I've ever made. Hard because it stripped me of direction, identity, status. Easy because my heart had already decided. Suddenly I was standing still while the world rushed forward. No badge, no trajectory, no plan, except one. I wanted to serve. I wanted knowledge. I wanted to give back to the community that had given me purpose. Over the years, I studied, trained, learned, received traditional authorizations, taught Quran, guided students, served quietly. Eventually, life brought me full circle. I became an imam, a Muslim chaplain, a counselor to students searching for meaning. And then, history intervened. The world became obsessed with fear again. Terror, surveillance, suspicion. An FBI counterterrorism agent reached out to me, wanting to build a relationship. I knew what that meant. I kept my distance. Until one day, an assistant U.S. attorney walked into my office with a subpoena, a legal threat. Give us information or go to jail. I hired a lawyer, and soon I found myself sitting in front of a grand jury. 20 ordinary Americans. No lawyers beside me, no script, just questions. They didn't ask about crimes. They asked about Islam, about mentorship, about trust, about humanity. One woman looked at me gently and said, "Has this situation affected your relationship with the person you were mentoring?" I paused. "Of course it has," I said quietly. "Thank you for asking." I could see the attorney's discomfort, because the moment people see humanity, the system loses control. Years later, something extraordinary happened. My grandmother, childlike, gentle, fading, watched me pray. One day she said, "That thing you do upstairs, I want to do that with you." I prayed with her. I told her about God, about truth, about surrender, and she accepted Islam, peacefully, easily, without fear. She left this world with light in her heart, and I understood something then. All those years ago, I thought the FBI was my calling. I was wrong. It was only the road